Hello and welcome to this video where we're going to look at vaulted ceilings within Heatpunk and how to model a couple of different types and how to manipulate the ceiling regions in order to model vaults. Now, one thing we should note straight away is if we're vaulting a ceiling, we don't need to change the room height within the rooms section, which is here, and I can see that with this up-down arrow on this left-hand side. I can see my 2.4 meter high room here. We don't need to alter that. Obviously, if we have a section of the ceiling, in this case we're going to, which is flat, then that's where that flat 2.4 meter region will be. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a moment. In order to get to vaulting the ceilings and overriding the sort of room heights and the wall heights and making sure we can model the correct volume, that's done within our floors and ceiling section. Here we're going to model an extended kitchen dining kind of vaulted ceiling from top to bottom, so one simple slope high to low. What I mean by the flat ceilings is if I add my intermediate floor into here, whatever my room height was below, that's going to model where this flat section of the roof is, in this case an intermediate floor. So anything below this region is going to be modelled as 2.4 meters. However, if I just grab my ceiling region from this left-hand side, I've created my square, I can quite easily snap that to fill my room. If I click on this region, I have the same anchor points that I get on my rooms below. When I click on this, it gives me the option to add the vertex height. So for example, this might be 3 meters. I'm going to add that in, press enter, and we can see that's been set. Then if I click on this bottom corner, I can also set the opposite vertex height. And by doing that, Heatpunk has assumed that this whole stretch along here is 3 meters and it slopes down to 2 meters. And we can see that with this red arrow in the middle. So we have now created that vault, and that will have overridden the wall and volume values that the room was originally using. I can also now come in and add my roof lights, get my correct measurements, and I can have the aspect being the roof, as this is now vaulted, and make sure that that's being modelled correctly. So that's the very simple way of vaulting. Remember that we don't do it within the room, we do it above in the ceiling region. Now let's take a look at the first floor, and we'll look at a couple of different vaults that are slightly more complicated. First one we will look at is a typical kind of double pitch. So I'll just come down here and I'll get the length of my wall, 3165, so that's going to be about 1550 to split this in the middle. So I will click on my corner, I will enter my size, and I can grab my other region as well, snap that in there, and get that lined up. So I'll just get this lined up with my room, like this. And for example, this other section of this roof might just be flat. So I can add this region in if I want to, but actually I don't necessarily need to, but for the purposes of this, I'll add that in there. So we're going to look at a pitch where we have a higher center point in the middle of the room. Same principle as before. I'm going to click on my corner. I'm going to enter my vertex height of 3 meters, and this is sloping down to 2.4. If we had room in roofs, things like that, where we're vaulting down quite a bit lower than 2.4, maybe to 1.6, 1.4 meters, then this works the exact same way. You would enter your tallest height and your shallowest height, and that would create your vaults, which we have here. Now, so far we've looked at 1 and 2 regions, essentially, that are vaulting, but what happens if we have a little bit more than that? So I'm going to bring in my roof region again. I will double check the length of this bedroom, 4.4 meters. So I'm going to set the edge of my corner here, the length, to be 2.2. And then I'm also going to grab a second region and drop that in there, like so. So we have this second region that we've dropped in, and we're just going to start to manipulate a couple of these corners now to change our shapes. So by clicking on this red corner here, I can unlock that, and I can now drag this down, and I might know that my pitch comes down here into 2.5 meters of length. And if I then just change my other one briefly, I can actually drag this down and snap that in there. I can also bring a new region in, snap that in the corner. This time though, I can change this corner here. Might look a little bit funky initially, but then I don't actually need this point. I can delete that and move this over to create my 3 areas. Now we've got a triangle here, which we haven't seen before. So again, I can click on this point and I can add my heights. So we'll just stick with the 3 meters that we've been using up to now, which has been done. I can click on my external corner over here and add this in as my 2.4 meters. We've created a sideways slope here because we obviously haven't added the 3rd point in here, which I will do now at 2.4 meters. And we have vaulted this section this way. And obviously I can also come in here and add the other heights that we have here as well to vault my corresponding sections accordingly. And this allows us to start to shape the different room types with the different region sections. And the best thing to do is to create a region for each of the vaults, set the lengths and the widths and the heights accordingly, and then we'll be able to create our vaults like we can see here.